I never thought the day my life would turn upside down would start with blueberry pancakes. Saturday morning. Sun creeping lazily through the blinds. I was halfway through my second cup of black coffee, still groggy from the night before, when Melissa walked into the kitchen wearing a robe I bought her for our anniversary 3 years ago. She set a manila envelope on the table, slid it across like it was a job offer instead of a loaded gun, and said calmly, without a flicker of hesitation, "These are your divorce papers. Sign them. Today." At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel, tasteless one. Divorce. I half laughed. What the hell are you talking about? But her eyes were colder than I'd ever seen. And then she dropped the second bomb. I inherited $10.4 million last week. I don't need you anymore. That's when I felt the ground beneath my chair vanish. 10 million. My wife had just become a multimillionaire overnight. And instead of celebrating together, she looked at me like I was a broken chair she couldn't wait to toss into the trash. I remember staring at her in disbelief, the paper trembling in my hands. All those years we struggled together. I worked 10-hour shifts at the auto shop while she played entrepreneur, jumping from one failed business to the next. I believed in her, paid her debts, covered the bills when her candle brand or wellness coaching didn't pan out. And now, with one signature, she was done with me? I stood up, heart racing. "What the hell is this, Melissa?" She smiled, smirked, actually, and walked to the doorway, arms crossed. "It's called freedom, Kyle, and I'm finally living it. Pack your things. I want you out of the house today." I almost laughed. "You can't just throw me out. We built this place together." That's when she raised her voice, high-pitched and venomous. "This is my house now, and you're not taking a damn thing with you. That includes that bag you're holding. Drop it." I clutched the duffel instinctively. Inside were just a few clothes, my watch, some cash. My laptop. Nothing more. I'm not leaving without my things. And that's when it escalated. Her two brothers, Brad and Justin, barged in from the hallway. I didn't even know they were in the house. Brad, the bulkier one, grabbed my shoulders. Justin reached for the bag. I tried to push them off, shouting, swearing. And then Brad got behind me and yanked me by the hair like I was a damn doll. I hit the floor hard, clutching the bag like it was the last thing keeping me sane. They dragged me across the polished tile like a piece of furniture. Melissa just watched from the doorway, arms still folded, eyes lit with amusement. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. But as they shoved me out into the driveway, bagless, bruised, humiliated, I turned around, stared straight at Melissa, and said, "Clear as a bell. You'll regret this. Every single one of you will." She rolled her eyes. "Yeah? Good luck out there, loser." The door slammed shut. My life as I knew it, my marriage, my home, my sense of safety, was over in less than an hour. But what they didn't know was that they hadn't just betrayed a husband. They'd awakened something else. And the storm was coming. After the front door slammed behind me, I stood in the driveway for a full minute, staring at the house we built together, Melissa and me. Every stone on the facade, every inch of that porch, I had touched with my own 2 hands. And now it felt like a stranger's place. Her place. That smirk on her face wasn't new. I'd just been too blind to see what it really meant. I walked away with nothing but my phone and the keys to my truck. Drove off without a destination. Just needed to feel the wind cut through the panic. It wasn't until 2 days later, when the ache in my scalp from where Brad dragged me out finally dulled, that I started thinking clearly. I was crashing at my buddy Mike's place, half eating, barely sleeping, replaying every moment from the last year. That's when the small things started to connect. The late-night work meetings. The extra phone she swore was for business. The change in perfume, the gym sessions that conveniently ran 2 hours longer than they should have. The way she stopped asking how my day was. How she started using words like space and self-fulfillment. But the moment that really punched me in the gut, I remembered one night about 3 months ago. I came home early from work and found Melissa on the patio, whispering into her phone. When she noticed me, she snapped it shut so fast you'd think I'd caught her trading secrets with the CIA. She smiled, too wide, and said it was just her cousin from Chicago. Melissa doesn't have a cousin in Chicago. I should have known then. Fueled by a growing pit in my stomach, I made up my mind to look deeper. I wasn't stupid, I just hadn't wanted to see the truth. Now I needed to. I called in a favor from an old friend, Derek, who works in cybersecurity. I gave him Melissa's email and the number she'd been hiding from me, the business line. He said he'd call me back in a few hours. That night, I sat alone on Mike's worn leather couch, sipping warm beer and listening to the buzz of the refrigerator. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. Derek, Kyle, you need to see this. He sent screenshots, dozens of them, messages, photos, emails, some of them from months ago, others just days before she threw me out. Melissa had been having an affair, not with one man, with two. One was her so-called financial advisor, a sleazeball named Trent who looked like a guy that wears sunglasses indoors. The other, personal trainer named Cody, 28, tattooed, and clearly not shy about taking shirtless mirror selfies. She had been bouncing between them like it was a game, sweet-talking Trent for investment tips, using Cody like her personal boy toy. There were messages where she laughed about me, called me a predictable little puppy, said she was just waiting for the money to hit, then cutting the leash. She said I served my purpose. I dropped the phone, just sat there, eyes burning. That was the moment my grief snapped into something harder, sharper. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was humiliating. She hadn't just left me, she had used me. Melissa had plotted this, waited until the money came through, then yanked the rug out from under me like I was nothing. And her brothers? They were in on it. Those two had never liked me, thought I was too average for their sister. I could almost hear them now, laughing about how they tossed me out of her house like trash. But I wasn't trash. And I wasn't done. I didn't sleep that night. Not a minute. My brain was on fire. Images of Melissa and her little toy boys swirling in my mind like a storm I couldn't outrun. Her voice calling me a predictable little puppy kept echoing in my ears like a bad song on repeat. By sunrise, I wasn't sad anymore. I was done. Done feeling like a victim. Done pretending I didn't see the cracks in our marriage long before the money came into play. I took a long shower, shaved the week-old stubble from my face, and put on a clean shirt, one I hadn't worn since before all this. Then I texted her. Me? We need to talk. In person. One time. You owe me that. To my surprise, she agreed. We met later that afternoon at a small coffee shop near the downtown strip. It was neutral ground. No audience. Just her and me, sitting at a corner table like strangers on a first date, with tension thick enough to slice through. She showed up in full armor. High heels, oversized sunglasses, flawless makeup, and that smug little smirk. The same one she wore when she kicked me out. Wow, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. You look alive. I figured you'd be somewhere crying into a beer. I stared at her, deadpan. You've had your fun, Melissa. Now I want the truth. She shrugged like it was nothing. You already know everything, don't you? Derek found the messages? I'm guessing. I nodded. She leaned back, playing with her straw. You weren't supposed to find out. But hey, you're not as stupid as I thought. I clenched my jaw. How long? She didn't even blink. A year with Trent. 6 months with Cody. Maybe more with a few others. I couldn't speak at first. The audacity in her tone, the lack of remorse. It was staggering. You know, I said finally, we were supposed to be building a life together. You remember that? Or was that all just a warm-up before you struck gold? She laughed, full and bitter. Kyle, come on. You were comfortable, predictable. You gave me safety. But you're not exciting. You never were. And when the money came, I realized I didn't need to settle anymore. I felt something snap inside me then. Not rage, but clarity. You used me, I said, for years. Let me carry you while you pretended to chase dreams. I sacrificed for you. I worked double shifts for you. And I said thank you, she snapped. Now you're bitter because I moved on? No, I'm bitter I said, eyes locked on hers. Because you built your freedom on my back, then had your Neanderthal brothers drag me out like a criminal. She smirked again, that same smug little twist of the mouth. Oh, please, you should be grateful. Most guys don't even get the dignity of a clean break. That's when I knew she was gone. Not just from my life, but from who she used to be. This wasn't the woman I married. This was someone else. Cold, calculating, rotting from the inside out. Enjoy your money, I said, standing up. You'll need it, especially when your world starts crumbling. Her smile flickered, just for a second, a crack in the mask. You threatening me, Kyle? She asked. I leaned down, whispered calmly. No, Melissa, I'm promising you. You betrayed the wrong man. And with that, I walked out, left her sitting there, her coffee untouched, the weight of what was coming starting to settle in. She thought she'd won. She thought I was done. But the truth? I was just getting started. 3 days after the cafe confrontation, I made my first move. Melissa thought I was powerless. She thought I'd just disappear like some rejected puppy she could toss out and forget. But what she forgot, what her ego wouldn't let her see, is that I had been quietly building, observing, collecting pieces of a puzzle while she played queen of her plastic kingdom. I didn't want revenge. Not the petty kind. I wanted justice. Cold, precise, and unforgettable. The first thing I did was reach out to a lawyer I met years ago during a small business dispute, Clarence Reynolds. Smart, aggressive, the kind of guy who made sharks nervous. When I laid everything out, Melissa's inheritance, the betrayal, the fact that we were still married when she got the money. His eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. She filed for divorce after the inheritance? He asked, flipping through the timeline I gave him. 3 days after the wire transfer hit her account, I said. He smirked. Oh, that's messy for her. Real messy. Turns out, under state law, anything acquired during the marriage, even an inheritance, can be considered part of marital assets if it was commingled. And guess what? Melissa had deposited a portion of that money into our shared account before she opened her private ones. Not much, but enough. Looks like she gave you an opening, Clarence said. And I'm going to kick that damn door wide open. While Clarence went to war in the legal trenches, I focused on the emotional battlefield. I posted a calm, carefully worded message on Facebook. Nothing dramatic, just a life update, letting people know Melissa and I were separating, that I appreciated everyone's support, and I was focusing on healing. But I tagged her, and I made the post public. The result? An avalanche. Mutual friends, old coworkers, even her yoga buddies flooded the comments and messages. Most hadn't known about the split yet. Some had seen things, odd behavior, flirtatious photos, but didn't think much of it. Others, they'd heard rumors. Now the pieces were clicking. And that's when the first domino fell. Melissa's affair with Cody, the trainer, wasn't as secret as she thought. A friend of mine, Tina, who works at the gym, messaged me. You're not the first wife he's been with. Melissa used to brag that he made her feel 25 again. I just thought it was a dumb fling. That fling was now leaking into Melissa's pristine, curated online image. Her businesswoman of the year persona was taking hits. Screenshots I never released began circulating, Derek screenshots. Her texts about using me, mocking me, talking about Cody and Trent like they were accessories. She tried to control it. Posted a filtered selfie with some BS quote about letting go of the past to find inner peace. But the comments? Brutal. People weren't buying it. One of Cody's old flings commented, "You mean letting go of your husband after you got rich? LOL girl, we see you." And then came the sponsors. Melissa had been working on some influencer deals, wellness brands, candles, yoga retreats. All that soft glow Instagram garbage. I don't know who pulled the trigger first, but by the end of the week, 3 of them had quietly removed her face from their promotions. The damage had begun. She called me once. Blocked number. I didn't answer. She sent me a single message after that. "You're playing dirty, Kyle. You want a war? You got it." I didn't reply, because this wasn't war. This was me turning on the lights and letting the roaches scatter. She burned me to the ground. Now I was rising from the ashes, with a gas can in one hand and a match in the other. By the time Melissa sent that "you want a war?" message, I was already 10 moves ahead. She had no idea what kind of storm she had invited. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing the mess behind the manicured mask she wore like a second skin. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was just peeling back the glittery wallpaper to reveal the mold she'd been hiding, and it was spreading fast. The next crack in her porcelain world came through Trent, the financial advisor she'd been playing house with behind my back. I'd done some quiet digging into him. Derek ran a few background checks. Turns out, Trent wasn't just a shady advisor. He was a fraud. The guy had been under investigation in 2 states for giving unlicensed investment advice. Multiple complaints. No certifications. And the best part? Melissa had publicly thanked him on her Instagram for helping structure my new financial life. So I made an anonymous call to one of the journalists I knew from a local business paper. Told them I had some inside info on a shady advisor working with a newly wealthy local influencer. Sent them documentation, screenshots, timeline. Gave them just enough to get them sniffing. For days later, an article dropped. Fake advisor may have defrauded local clients. Influencer linked to investigation. Melissa's name wasn't in the title, but it was in the body. Paragraph 6. With a photo. She tried to control the fallout. Posted a teary-eyed video on her story about being deceived and betrayed by someone she trusted. But the internet has no sympathy for hypocrites. People started reposting her own bragging comments, calling her out. Her house of lies was shaking. But the next tremor came from within. One of Melissa's old friends, Jennifer, messaged me privately. Jen and I had always been on good terms. She was one of the few people from Melissa's circle who treated me like more than a backup dancer in my own marriage. She had something to say. "Kyle, I didn't want to get involved. But you deserve to know. Melissa's brothers knew about everything. Trent, Cody, all of it. She even joked at a party that you'd be out of the house before spring." That hit me like a freight train. Not just because of the betrayal, but because of how deliberate it had all been. They didn't just kick me out. They planned it, like vultures circling a body that wasn't even cold. But here's the thing. That kind of cruelty doesn't come without cracks. Brad, the meathead brother who yanked me by the hair, worked for a private contracting company that relied heavily on reputation and background checks. I tipped off a contact there, anonymously, and pointed them toward the article linking Melissa's crew to a financial fraud. I never said he was involved directly, but guilt by association spreads fast when your sister's name is suddenly toxic in the news. A week later, Brad was suspended pending internal review. Melissa posted some cryptic quote about fake friends and snakes in the grass that day. She knew her empire was bleeding. The final stroke, for now, came when I filed a motion to freeze joint marital assets until our divorce was finalized. Clarence handled it like a surgeon. The court accepted the motion. Melissa got served 2 days later. She went ballistic. Sent me an email this time, long unhinged, calling me a parasite, a coward, a failure of a man. Said I was jealous of her success. Told me Cody was younger, better. Actually knows how to please a woman. Every line was poison, but it didn't sting. Not anymore. I read it once, closed it, and then smiled. Because every angry word was fuel for the fire she thought she'd be immune to. And the fire wasn't done spreading yet. There's a special kind of silence that comes right before a court hearing. It's not peaceful. It's heavy. Like the air knows what's coming. That's how it felt the morning we stepped into that sterile, echoing courtroom. Melissa walked in like she was strutting onto a runway. Tight black dress, sharp heels, sunglasses still on indoors. The same fake confidence she'd been wearing since the day she handed me those papers. Cody wasn't with her. Neither was Trent. Just her and some overpriced divorce attorney who looked like he should be playing golf instead of talking about marriage breakdowns. I sat beside Clarence, cool-headed but laser-focused. He had a stack of documents in a black leather folder. Every page inside was a nail for Melissa's golden coffin, emails, screenshots, bank transfers, dates that lined up just wrong enough to tell the real story. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, looked at us over her glasses and said, "Let's begin." Clarence stood and laid it all out like a surgeon with a scalpel. He talked about the inheritance, how part of it was moved into our joint account before separation. He spoke calmly, with confidence, showing the court how Melissa's narrative was crumbling. Then he dropped the bomb. "Your Honor, we are requesting that half of all assets, including proceeds from the recent inheritance, be considered marital property under existing state law, due to documented commingling and active use of said funds during the marriage." Melissa's lawyer nearly choked. Melissa's face twisted like she'd just swallowed bleach. "You're insane," she whispered to me across the table, her voice low but feral. "No," I whispered back. "I'm awake." When it was her turn to speak, she tried to play the victim, said I was manipulative, lazy, unmotivated, claimed I leached off her ambitions, and that she'd finally broken free of a toxic relationship. But the judge wasn't biting, especially not when Clarence calmly slid over the screenshots of her texts with Cody and Trent. The ones where she wrote that she was just buying time until the money came through. The one where she said she was planning the escape for months. The judge stared at those pages for a long moment, then looked back up and said, "Ms. Harper, this doesn't look like the actions of someone trapped in a toxic marriage. It looks like manipulation, calculated manipulation." Melissa's face turned red. Her lawyer tried to pivot, said the messages were taken out of context, that they didn't prove financial intention. But the damage was done. Before we left that courtroom, the judge issued a temporary freeze on all assets, including Melissa's personal accounts, until the full divorce proceedings concluded. The court would now decide how to divide the money, including the inheritance. Melissa was stunned, not just because she didn't get her way, but because the system she thought would protect her was finally seeing her for what she was. On the way out, she brushed past me, muttering, "You think this is a win? You'll die alone, broke and bitter." I didn't even flinch, just looked at her and said, "Better than surrounded by lies, money, and men who'll never love you." She walked off in silence. That night, I sat in Mike's garage again, sipping a cold beer with my feet up, thinking about the whirlwind I just walked through. I wasn't celebrating yet. This wasn't over. But the scales were finally tipping back. The truth was out. The court was on it. And Melissa? She wasn't the untouchable goddess she'd made herself believe she was. The house she built on betrayal was burning. And she was running out of exits. You'd think after everything. Being tossed out like garbage, cheated on, humiliated, dragged into court. I'd already seen the worst Melissa had to offer. But no, there was still one more lie festering beneath the surface. And when it came out, it didn't just burn, it scorched everything. It started with a phone call from Derek. "Hey," he said, his voice tight. I was going through some metadata from that second phone Melissa was using. Something weird came up. My stomach dropped. By now, I'd learned that weird usually meant devastating. "She sent a money transfer to a name I didn't recognize," Derek said. "A woman, name's Amber Collins. Happened a few months before she filed the divorce." I squinted. "Who the hell is Amber?" "Funny you ask," Derek said, "because Melissa labeled the payment as baby essentials." Silence. Then it hit me. Baby essentials. No way. But I knew, deep down, before he even said the next part. Melissa has a kid, Kyle. Or at least she paid for one. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Everything around me blurred. Derek sent the receipts. Melissa had been sending money monthly to this woman. Small amounts at first, then a lump sum about a month before she filed the divorce. Always labeled vaguely, support, clothes, hospital. I stared at the screen like it was a horror movie. That night, I drove out to Amber's listed address. I didn't even know what I was going to say. I just knew I couldn't live another day in the dark. She answered the door. Mid-30s, tired eyes, holding a baby maybe 7 or 8 months old. And the moment I saw his face, my heart sank. He had Cody's jawline. And Melissa's eyes. "Are you?" Kyle? She asked, looking uncertain. I nodded. Can we talk? She didn't invite me in, but she stepped outside and closed the door behind her. I told her everything. Who I was, what I'd been through. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just asked for the truth. Amber looked exhausted, like she'd been waiting for this moment too. She said she wasn't married, Amber said quietly. Told me Cody was just a fling, that he didn't want the baby. She wanted to help, so she promised support if I kept quiet. You didn't know she was still married? Amber shook her head. She said you were an abusive ex, that you didn't matter. I laughed bitterly. That's what she does. Writes her own script and hopes no one checks the facts. I left without threatening Amber. She didn't deserve that. She was a victim too. Another piece on Melissa's board. But I took one photo before I left. A photo of the baby. Not to use publicly. Just to remind myself who Melissa really was. The next morning, I sent her a text. Just one sentence. Does Cody know he's a father? She didn't respond for 4 hours. Then, finally, you're crossing a line now, Kyle. I stared at the screen, calm as stone. No, Melissa, you crossed it. I'm just showing you what it looks like from the other side. That secret, it was the last nail in her coffin. Everything she'd built, her image, her lies, her money, it was starting to collapse. Because the thing about betrayal is it doesn't just rot your relationships. It infects everything. And the infection was finally reaching her heart. By the time we reached the final hearing, Melissa looked like a shadow of the woman who threw me out months earlier. Her hair was pulled back tight, too tight. Her skin, once glowing with filters and false confidence, looked pale, hollow. The courtroom lighting doesn't lie. She sat across from me like she didn't even recognize who I was anymore. And maybe she didn't. The man who walked in that day wasn't the predictable little puppy she thought she had married. That man had been burned down. What stood now was the result of fire and betrayal. Sharper, colder, clear-eyed. The judge took her seat. It was time. The proceedings were finalizing everything. Property division, asset settlement, and, most importantly, the fate of the $10 million inheritance. Thanks to Clarence's relentless work and Melissa's own digital footprint, the court had more than enough evidence to establish commingling and intent. And when the judge finally ruled, it came with a sentence I'll never forget. 50% of all marital assets, including the inheritance deposited into shared accounts, is awarded to the petitioner. Me. Melissa's lips parted like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. She just sat there, blinking. The reality hit her like a silent bomb. She wasn't invincible. Her lies had come back to devour her. The courtroom emptied slowly, like a funeral. Her lawyer patted her shoulder, but even he looked like he was done playing clean-up for a woman who made messes in every direction. Outside, she finally approached me. For the first time in months, her voice wasn't sharp. It wasn't arrogant or playful. It was almost small. You destroyed everything, she said. I turned to her, looked her dead in the eye. No, Melissa, you destroyed it. I just stopped letting you bury it. She paused, eyes flickering with something like regret. But I didn't buy it. Not anymore. Not after what she did. Not after what she hid. Cody knows now, I added. Her face flinched like I'd slapped her. He reached out to Amber. Wants to be involved. I didn't have to lift a finger. Truth spreads fast when it's finally set free. Her lip curled. You think you're a hero? I shook my head. No, I think I'm free. And that was the difference. She stormed off, heels clicking on the concrete, walking back to a life that no longer bent to her will. And I stood there in the sun, breathing in the kind of silence that didn't weigh heavy anymore. It was clean, fresh. Over the next few weeks, everything settled. I bought a small place outside of town, nothing fancy, but mine. Quiet. I went back to work, started lifting again, sleeping better, eating like a human being. I even signed up for a wilderness retreat. Just me, nature, and zero distractions. No lies, no masks. Melissa. Last I heard, her influencer deals dried up. Brands don't like scandals. Cody took a paternity test, confirmed what we already knew. And Trent? Well, he's being investigated by state regulators, and his name keeps popping up in new reports. She picked her men like she picked her morals, cheap and temporary. Sometimes people ask me what I learned through all this. I used to think loyalty was about sticking through storms no matter what. But now I know loyalty only matters if both people are holding the same umbrella. Melissa left me out in the rain while she danced with someone else inside. And when I finally stepped out, soaked and broken, I didn't wait for her to open the door. I built my own damn shelter. To anyone reading this, if you feel something's off, trust it. Don't ignore the cracks. Don't let love become your blindfold. Because when betrayal finally hits, it won't knock. It will kick the door in. And by then, it's too late to pack your heart safely. But you can rebuild, even from ashes, especially from ashes.